Yes, it's recording.
Um, so hi and welcome again to the First Person Encounters. This is our episode with uh, game developer, uh, uh, programmer based in Toronto, uh, Abhi. And Abhi he said that he moved to Toronto when he was 12, and then uh, he kind of he decided to kind of go into game development and mobile game programming, and he has his kind of working with a colleague to make mm, this awesome game called Venba. And I will let Abhi introduce himself and tell us about Venba uh, without further ado. So, Abhi, over to you.
Thank you, thank you so much. Yeah, so my name is Abhi. I am currently 27 years old. I'm in Toronto, and my day job I work as a mobile game developer, as a programmer, and recently I've started working on my own sort of indie project called Venba, which is a narrative cooking game where you play as the titular character Venba, who's the mother, and she moves with her family from India to Toronto in the late 1980s. And the game is about cooking a lot of food and holding conversations and exploring what it means to be an immigrant family in Toronto. And I'm working on this game with my friend Sam Elkana, who's the artist. And yeah, yeah.
So what a fantastic concept, a narrative cooking game. So I mean, and connected with an immigrant family. So how I mean, why did you start kind of conceptualizing this game this way? I mean, it is so important. I've stayed in the U.S. for a while, and I remember heading to the Indian store to get kind of ingredients. Which were like so dear to us all of a sudden, which were not available. And so, what is this connection with cooking and immigrant lives in North America and Europe, perhaps? So, why did you focus on cooking and food?
uh, yeah, for sure. So uh, I know from the premise of the game, and then like from the premise of like my life itself, it can seem very autobiographical or something. But in many ways, I think uh, like we call like assimilation, like when immigrants are assimilated, it's when they can completely live a Canadian or an American lifestyle. But I don't think of myself as assimilated. I still speak and think in Tamil and things like that. But what I found interesting was a lot of times when a set of parents, especially when they come here, they come at an age of like when they're 40s or in their 50s, and then when they raise their kids here, the kids turn out to be much more assimilated than they are. And that sort of creates a friction between these two parties, right? And to me,
Mhm.
that always bothered me. And I even personally, I feel a lot of guilt on my side of things. And I thought the best way to explore that was through this game. And the reason is like food. I think it's the hardest, most persisting link, because
Mm.
a lot of times, like friends of mine who are much more assimilated, they don't speak in Tamil, or they don't think in Tamil, or they lose that language, and they lose connection to movies and or music and things like that. But food is the one that lasts the longest, because they grow up eating it, and it's once you develop that palate, it's really hard to lose it. And so I thought, it would be nice to explore the relationship between a mother and a son, uh, and the mom is trying to she's trying to communicate through cooking, as many mothers do. But in this instance, like it's the only remaining bridge between the mother and the son. So I thought that really lended itself to a nice gameplay.
Oh, so that is so fascinating. I'm just wondering, so how does the game play out actually? What do you exactly do in the game?
Yeah,
How does this, how does this work?
yeah. So I know that I knew that I wanted to make cooking into a game, and but there was a huge challenge there for me because when I looked at other cooking games for reference, there's either games like a Dinner Dash or whatever, where the game is not about the cooking but about serving and
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things, and that didn't really fit in here. On the other side of the spectrum, there's games like Cooking Mama, which is very much focused on like chop the vegetables 3 times vertically, and like the very mechanical actions of cooking. uh,
Right.
and to me, I think though both of those things are fine, but for the story that we're trying to tell, I felt that any of these two mechanics would sort of conflict with the emotional core of the story, especially when there's more serious subject matter that's going on. So when I thought about how to mechanize cooking, and because I like to cook a lot myself, um, I thought what I thought would be interesting is that Venba brings home from home a recipe book that is given to her by her mother, and the idea is that the recipe book gets damaged in travel. So when the player sees the recipe, they don't see the entire recipe; they only see parts of it. And so when they start cooking, you see a table and you have all these ingredients and tools, and you have a list of instructions that are half complete, and you have to sort of put them together and make whatever you're trying to make. But instead, because you don't have those instructions, you have to really understand the recipe itself. Like, why am I doing things the way they are? And you do that by interacting with the tools and the ingredients and trying to learn about them. And hopefully, it's sort of like a nice small interaction puzzle that you put together,
Mm-hmm.
and you're rewarded with a nice dish. That is the
Fascinating.
yeah, that is the cooking gameplay. uh Around this, there's also a sort of like a night in the woods style um conversations, and things happen in the home, and you play as the mother, you talk, you can hold different conversation choices, and whatever you cook that day sort of leads back into the narration, and whatever happens in the story leads back to the cooking, that sort of thing.
That is very interesting. And there's also the element of cultural memory because you're remembering kind of how to do things, as it were, and then kind of completing a recipe. There's also part of perhaps Venba, who's the protagonist, I believe here, remembering back to her roots in India,
Yeah.
or remembering back to her roots as a mother, kind of. So there is a part of I think uh, I may be right in guessing that there is a lot of India in your game, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and kind of remembered India from like really far off. So uh, I don't know, is that correct, or
Yeah, there
yeah?
is definitely a lot of longing for India.
Oh, brilliant,
And
brilliant.
yeah, 100%.
So fantastic. I mean, we are all longing for India in our various ways,
Yes.
wherever we are, actually.
Hmm.
Uh, and even more so if we are physically away from this country.
Hmm.
So it is a beautiful game. I'm also just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the art in the game, and
Yep.
about kind of what it looks like, what it will, and when you think you'll be able to make it available for the world to play it. Really, all of that. These.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So right now there's only one artist on the game. It's He's an artist called Sam Elkana. He's from Indonesia, and him and I, we met at a mobile game studio, and we were colleagues, and we had a lot of similar tastes in movies, and we really wanted to make a game together. And I think in 2019, him and I were just tossing around some ideas back and forth, and towards the end of it, or maybe like early 2020, is when I pitched him this one, and he immediately liked it because he has sort of the similar experiences with uh, him coming from Indonesia to Canada. And he's a fantastic artist because like a lot of artists, they are either, they're very skilled in one thing. They can be a concept artist, or like a they can work in engine or an animator, but Sam can really do like all of it. And so he's really like the Swiss Army knife of the artists. That's been super helpful. But in terms of art style, he's super strongly influenced by uh, the early Cartoon Network stuff. So things like there's this guy Gendy, who worked on Samurai Jack and Dexter's Laboratory, shows like that. He grew up watching those, and those have really strongly shaped his art style. So I think that's why, like, you see Venba, and it's so unique because we haven't seen that art style applied to uh, Indian content, right?
Yeah.
And it's very
Yeah.
angular, very sharp, and very good.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So fantastic. Well, um, so this proves to be kind of even more interesting than we anticipated. Uh, but I think Poonam wants to ask this question, but I'll let her ask her. But I'm also wondering, because you're articulating the thoughts of a woman, an Indian woman who's gone abroad, and there's a level at which gender comes in. How are you presenting? I mean, of course, as male developers, how are you presenting the feminine, the female voice?
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So I have two people who are helping me write the story together, because I found that part super challenging. And I don't think, like,
Mm-hmm.
the only there shouldn't be just a male perspective on the subject matter, for sure. So Divya Vivekanandan and Ranjini Prasad, they're both helping me quite a bit. And we all really agree on the same page about, there's a lot of, there is a question about why is it automatically that it's Venba is the person who's cooking, you know
yeah,
uh, and that's why
yeah,
that's why we didn't want to do anything
yeah,
like Cooking Mama, where that sort of thing, where it sort of glorifies,
yes,
uh, right? So even
stereotypes. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So but at the same time, it's also part of culturally, that is what's been happening, right?
Mhm.
So uh this game, it's a short indie game at the end of the day, so there's only so many things we can talk about. But
Yeah,
it does acknowledge that sort of the patriarchal role, uh that um that hierarchy that exists in the family itself. uh Especially one of Divya, especially, she uh one thing she tries to bring across is, like, in India, a lot of people we know, we've noticed, uh men who are social activists, and they fight against all sorts of social injustices uh in the outside, but at the home they sort of perpetuate the same without thinking twice about it. Like, it doesn't even seem like not normal to them. So we
absolutely.
yeah
Yeah.
so we touch upon
Yeah.
some of those things here too.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, this is just true. So, Poonam, do you think you want to take over? Uh,
I was just thinking that I we haven't even played Venba yet, and I'm already thinking about Venba too, where maybe we could see the little kid who's learning from the mother,
Yeah.
making how do I put it, like putting together recipes that he learned while watching the mother cook in the
Yeah.
kitchen, because
Yeah.
that's how I learned my cooking. Most of my quality time with my mother was spent in the kitchen, where a lot of
Hmm.
conversations would happen, and a lot of, the food is just not just food, it's also an emotion, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how when the lockdown had started, I was staying with a friend of mine, and I learned how to cook only because, no, of course I had to feed myself, but then I there was a huge emotion of wanting to recreate what my mother used to feed me when I was younger.
Right.
So cooking is such an important thing, such an important, beautiful emotion that often gets ignored and doesn't get talked about, especially in the video games world, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's a beautiful game.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing
Absolutely.
concept.
I wanted to butt in here saying that, it is also considered kind of such a non-male activity
Yeah,
in
yeah,
India, because oh, I mean, so the other day somebody I knew just told me, please don't mind, but I know that you cook. So I was kind of surprised, what was there to mind in it really.
yeah.
Then I realized that I wasn't supposed to cook as a male,
Yeah.
of course. And then I too had to learn cooking when I was in England, and I realized there was nobody to feed me. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know, but but then the thing is that it's something that you do outside, as a male outside India, and
Yeah.
also video games also being such a super masculine and charged kind of
Mhm.
pastime. Well, uh, this is how it's been perceived by some people, right?
Yeah.
And your game actually breaks those stereotypes so well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because I was really interested in cooking when I was since I was 18 or 19, right? And but if I was in India, like, if I grew up in that hyper sort of thing, like, I don't know if I would have had that same focus. But even within my family or within the communities here, when people hear that I cook, or when people taste what I cook, they're much more easily impressed. They have much lower standards for like men who cook. They're already impressed that we cook. But that's
Mm.
such a normal thing, right? Like, I don't know why that deserves recognition or praise. Yeah, so I definitely feel that for sure.
So I'm going to go from the serious to the flippant.
Uh-huh.
What is your favorite recipe in Venba?
Oh, good
Um,
question.
yeah,
So curious.
let me think about this, because yeah, yeah, I don't there it is still in development, so I'm a little worried that if
Oh,
I but yeah, I think biryani is my favorite recipe that's in it.
Okay,
Yeah,
fascinating,
yeah,
fascinating. Well, biryani is my favorite dish as well.
yeah.
So, well,
I had biryani yesterday.
so we bond over biryani.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
absolutely.
live in
Yeah.
Hyderabad. Souvik lives in Kolkata. So, yeah, and
Yes,
you love biryani,
we have
Abhi.
different versions
So
of biryani.
different versions.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I
Yes.
don't want to commit yet, but I think the one that's going to be in the game is a sort of a take on the Hyderabadi dum biryani.
Oh,
Oh, interesting.
hey,
Yeah.
I like this. I like this little
Interesting.
detail. Souvik, see, Hyderabad
Yes.
wins.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
know, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Biryani came to Kolkata with the Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, and they did not have enough meat for the Nawab, so they put aloo in there, so potatoes. So that's so Hyderabad is a different kind of gharana of
Yeah,
biryani than Kolkata. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing.
Uh,
Each time I start a recipe in Venba, I start researching it and like the history of it, just to know, the context. Um, and it's such an endless depth of uh, knowledge that you need to have, especially with biryani or just even anything.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
well, biryani in computer games, I'm definitely buying
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my God.
So I think, we kind of, again, over to Poonam, before we then get to asking about your experience, your first experience with video games,
Hmm.
as we always do in this series of interviews.
Hmm.
So Poonam, do you want to take over again?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the music of the game, that what I heard from the
Hmm.
Steam trailer. It was
Hmm.
really nice. Do you have who's the is there an artist behind it? Who is it?
Yeah, it's actually my brother who
Oh,
yeah
oh my
Wow.
God.
Yeah, he's his stage name is Alpha something.
Right.
So it's been sort of a tradition. Like I've been making games for a long time. Like really small games or projects, or things that are not even released, but I made it for a game jam or whatever. And my brother would, I know he does like hobby music stuff on the side. So when like it's been sort of the tradition for me, like the first person I would ask is like, hey, do you want to, can you make a song for this? Can you make a, and when the Venba trailer thing came along, we had a really short time to put that trailer together, and because the date was already fixed and things like that. So I told him about this, and he collaborated with a couple of Tamil artists in Toronto. And yeah, it's such a wonderful song. I'm super lucky to have that. Yeah.
And the game is set in the 1980s, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And one last, I think, yeah, one last question. Will this game be available on the mobile platforms?
Yeah. So I think, and both of you, please correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
I think for the Indian audience, mobile seems to be a very convenient platform for
Yes.
them to play games on. And because of that alone, I do want to bring this on mobile, just so that so many people can play. But if
Hmm.
I do that, it would have to be sort of like I release it on PC first, uh, PC or whatever consoles that want us, and then after that, I would look into porting the game to mobile.
Right. Makes
Oh yes,
sense.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I'm assuming it's going to have an Android as well as an iOS kind of.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Okay. So I have one more question regarding the game. So why the 1980s?
So yeah, I've been sort of dodging this. It's not. It starts in the 1980s, but it sort of follows the family as they grow, and
Right.
I picked the 1980s because it's a different time to immigration. Like 10 years ago, being like an immigrant kid in school is a much different experience than being an immigrant in school now. Like the social statuses and stereotypes, all these things are changing a lot for the better. So, for me, I thought, going back to the 1980s, uh, from talking to a lot of people there are some challenges there that I wanted to showcase and present.
Could you give us a couple of examples, or maybe just one?
Yeah. For okay, a simple example would be that Indian food is much more commonplace in Canada, in the US, in the pop culture. It's much more appreciated, and you know, uh, like people love it here. But if it's 20 years ago, and if you're a kid, you're going to school, you would be sort of embarrassed to open your lunchbox.
Right.
In that, you know what I mean? Because you shouldn't be embarrassed, but that social culture is a lot different back then.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
fascinating. And there have been movies around kind of food lunch. I remember one called The Lunchbox actually,
Yeah.
and the whole thing of so it is such an important thing in Indian culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure all other cultures as well, but this especially for kind of India, and uh, I okay, I'll kind of uh, now move on to asking you about your first experience with video games. I mean, how did you get into all of this, both development and playing video games as well?
Yeah, sure. So I think when I was 4 or 5, I think this was very popular in India back then. This is 1999 or 8 or something. But there was this bootleg console called the Terminator. Uh, it had it would come with a cartridge, 999 games in one. It would have Duck Hunt, the light gun zapper. Uh,
Oh
that
yes,
yes.
I
So
remember Duck Hunt.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a uh, I think it's a Chinese knockoff of the Nintendo Entertainment System, but we didn't know that back then, right? So to me, that's when I first started playing Mario and Battle Tanks and these kind of games. So I really liked it. I was always, into computers or anything like technology wise, and I really liked games. And like even apart from games, I have always had like a really big passion for movies and music and storytelling in general. Um, so the space that I sort of wanted naturally went towards was like, I want to tell stories in games. I want to do things in games, So I think when I was 10 or 11, I remember that there was a whole Pokemon craze in India, and people were playing Pokemon um, on their computers, which they weren't supposed to. You should play it on a console, but we didn't know that too back then. And then I came here to Canada at 13 or 12, and then there's the Xbox and PS3 and all these big consoles, right? So it just opened up the floodgates to my exposure, and I would play a lot of games at my friends' houses and things like that for a really long time. And I saw that here gaming was already sort of looked upon as a viable career and as a valid career path. And it's not just the kids who are talking about games, right? There are serious people who've dedicated their entire careers to talk and research and develop games. So when I came here, I just got the confidence that, okay, this is not a crazy thing that people already do this. So when it came to grade 12, I sort of at home, it was really hard to pitch like, oh, I want to be a game designer sort of thing. So I just said, okay, I'll do computer science, which is the default thing, and nobody's going to complain about that. But what I'm actually going to be using it for is to get into the games industry, things like that.
Very smart.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That's so smart.
Yeah, just like I did my PhD on video games and storytelling, but then I always packaged it because as English literature.
Same.
Wow, yeah, that is clever.
I still do.
Yeah,
But
nice.
I understand that we are kind of nearing the end of our time. So maybe Poonam, do you want to sum up with kind of like one last question or something?
Not really, not a question again, just a comment. Abhijit was talking about his love for the arts and the music and storytelling. But I wanted to tell you that it's your love for your love for beautiful art and music and storytelling is very visible from the trailer. So that's what I mean. It's quite obvious that you are somebody who has put in a lot of thought into it, and I'm really looking forward to playing it. Any idea when it will be out?
I just want to say thank you so much. That means that means a lot to me. Yeah, so we are looking at the end of the year as a potential first release. But worst case, I think at least early next year.
Okay.
If you're all up for it, I don't mind sending you guys like early level builds and things like that when we get that ready. If you want to, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Oh my God, this is
Oh my God,
yes, absolutely.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Absolutely.
No problem.
Absolutely.
Yes. So it is such a beautiful game, and it was a wonderful kind of time, talking to you and finding out more about Venba. I don't know, what do you think, Poonam?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Venba, we have been talking about Venba amongst our peers for a while anyway, and
that's
now
right.
we will talk
That's
about
right.
it even more.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
you
God,
might have
it's
other
nice.
people talking about Venba with you very soon when we release our podcast, which will be again fairly soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's such a beautiful, nuanced game. I'm in love with
yes.
Hence the questions, Abhi. Please don't mind our questions. We are just really, really curious about the game.
No. Yes. I totally enjoy this. First of all, I'm so happy that such a thing even exists in India. Like game from an academic perspective, especially for Souvik. Like I understand, starting this in 2001, this is completely new territory. Nobody has done that, right? It must have been, yeah. Yeah, I'm so impressed with that. Yeah, and
I shall tell you about my experiences some other day.
sure,
But, yeah.
sure. Yeah, I can imagine. Yes.
So it's all about having to package this as something else, because my parents, they wouldn't sort of get so. I can totally understand, how
Yeah.
development games can be for
Yeah.
Indian parents. But well, so thank you so much, Abhi, and I mean on behalf of Game Studies India and Poonam and me, of course, we are looking forward to a very, very kind of like smooth and early release for Venba, so that we can enjoy biryani in video games, biryani and much more besides.
Yes.
Yeah, and also explore our cultural memories of India.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Ravi. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much for
Yeah. Thank you. It was a
doing
pleasure, and
this.
thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I shall stop the recording now. Yeah?
Thanks. Yeah. Yes, please.